Hello, and welcome to Soothing Pod's Sleep Stories. I am Arif, and if you are here today to listen to a dreamy story that will soothe you and comfort you, you are in the right place. Tonight, you can sit back and relax as you listen to the moving tale of a woman finding love in the Wild West. Before we begin, let us take a moment to unwind and let go of the weight of the day. You don't need to carry your to-do list with you to bed or into this moment. Here, you are safe. Here, you can fully release your responsibilities and just be. Sometimes, it can be challenging to let our minds be at peace. Our thoughts may drift to tomorrow or yesterday, but there's no reason they cannot be here and now. Picture your mind as a bundle of fluffy blue yarn. It may be tangled or appear to be woven together. No matter how tangled it may be, if you turn your concentration to it, it can easily be unwound. Imagine that fluffy blue thread slowly untangling. Picture yourself pulling the thread gently, ever so gently, as the ball of yarn gets smaller and smaller. Feel your head relaxing as the pressure of the thread lessens with every breath you take. As that thread loosens, that rest of your body should relax and untangle with it. Feel the calming warmth of the yarn as it peacefully rests in your head. Slowly turn your focus away from your head and concentrate on your body. Is there anywhere where you are carrying tension? Search in between your shoulders, at the back of your neck, even in your jaw or your lower back. Wherever there is tension, picture that tightly wound bundle of yarn. Just as you did with your brain, begin to unwind that yarn ever so slowly. Breathe in fully as you picture it unraveling and become something much more relaxed and manageable. Search your body for these spots of tension and allow yourself to let them go. Here, in this comfortable bed, your body should feel whole. Now that we've taken a moment to find comfort in the space we are in, let us begin. Our journey starts in the windswept eastern plains of Colorado. The plains go on for miles, a living sea of golden waves, dotted by yellow sunflowers and blue Colorado columbines. The wind howls ever so softly over the grass, filling the air with the symphony of the leaves in motion against one another. In the far distance, the blue mountains rise against the setting sun. As the sun dips behind them, the sky is painted in watercolor shades of pink, purple, and orange. The creak of a wagon joins the western soundscape. In the driver's seat, Josephine O'Connor adjusts the brim of her hat as she stares in wonder at the landscape before her. Josephine grew up in a small fishing town on the coast of Massachusetts. She had a childhood of running along the rocky coastline in her bare feet, a childhood of dipping her toes in cool tidal pools and eating sandwiches under the watchful eyes of soaring seagulls. If she closed her eyes, she swore she could almost smell the briny aroma of those northeastern Atlantic waves lapping against the shore. If she really let her mind wander, The invigorating smell of lofty pine trees mingled alongside it. But now, she was in an entirely new environment. Instead of lofty pines, she smelled the herbal sweetness of sage as it rubbed against the wheels of the wagon. The floral smell of dozens of flowers all seemed to meld together as they danced across the prairie, filling the air with a calming blend of scents. Josephine was pleased to be in a new environment, seeking new things. She had been hired as the local school teacher for the town of Hope Springs, a cozy town nestled at the base of the Rocky Mountains. In the distance, she could see the glowing lights of the town. To her surprise, she felt utterly calm. She hoped she would be able to make this town home. Something deep within her told her she would be able to. As her wagon rolled closer, she was able to take in the town for what it was. Quaint wooden storefronts lined the dusty main street. She could smell the earthy, inviting aroma of a wood stove warming the buildings. And then she saw her schoolhouse. At the end of Main Street, it sat at the base of the mountain. The building looked brand new, with shiny windows and a brightly painted door. Josephine couldn't help herself. She tied up her horse and wagon and found herself walking into the schoolhouse. Desks sat in neat little rows before a blackboard. To her surprise, a lantern flickered on her desk. "I wanted it to be ready for you to see," a voice rung out from behind her. Josephine turned to see him for the very first time. Sheriff Wyatt Whitman stood just outside the doorframe, silhouetted by the beautiful afternoon sky. He looked as though he had stepped right out of a painting. He wore a cowboy hat, clean boots, and a kind expression in his amber eyes. On his chest, his shiny sheriff's badge seemed to twinkle in the light of the lantern. Josephine thanked him for organizing the room for her. She stepped forward to introduce herself, her heels clicking against the wood floor with every step she took towards him. When she placed her hand in his, she felt a warmth flood her body. It started at the touch of his skin and traveled down her body, tingling every nerve, every cell, every part of her. For a moment, she was lost in the kindness within those warm eyes of his, and he was lost too. Wyatt stared at this beautiful girl, her green eyes reflecting the colors of the sky, and his sense of time and place escaped him. It had been years since he had encountered someone who made him feel this way. He felt transfixed, drawn to her in a way he never imagined possible. After a moment of sweet smiles, he regained his composure, offering to take Josephine to her new home. Normally, Josephine wouldn't follow a man she barely knew, but with him, she already felt safe. He led her down a small path away from the schoolhouse. Overhead, cedar and birch trees swayed in the breeze. Birds seemed to be singing to them as they meandered down the shady path. Wildflowers nipped at their ankles, leaving petals and pollen in their wake. Finally, she saw her new home, a cozy little wood building in a clearing. On one side, A river bubbled over rocks and fallen logs. The sound was like a lullaby, lulling her to sleep. Wyatt motioned to the river, telling her he had the home built here so she would have easy access to water after work. Josephine thanked him for putting the house up. She knew it was probably time for him to leave, but she longed for him to stay longer. She longed to get to know him, even if it was only for a few moments. Though the sun was truly setting now, Wyatt motioned to the back of her wagon. He offered to help her unload, and she couldn't help but smile. She prided herself on being independent, on being able to handle herself as well as any man. But she thought the gesture was sweet. Together, they pulled her furniture and chests out of the wagon. As they worked, Wyatt asked about her past. Josephine told him about some of her favorite childhood memories. She spoke of catching fireflies on humid summer nights, how the fireflies would waddle across the palm of her hand, illuminating her in their soft glow. She spoke of how she'd wander off into the meadows filled with wildflowers and lie down with a book. In the soft grass, she felt like she was in another world. She'd get lost in the book in her hands and drift off to sleep in the warm evening sun, awakening only after she was fully rested and refreshed. As she spoke, Wyatt savored the words coming out of her mouth like they were the sweetest thing he had ever heard. He watched the way her eyes lit up when she talked, the way the corners of her lips slipped into a smile as she reminisced about those wonderful childhood days. Josephine asked Wyatt what life had been like for him. He was surprised, and in the moment, he realized how long it had truly been since anyone asked him that question. He told Josephine about how he grew up on a farm in the Blue Ridge Mountains. He spent his childhood taking care of the animals and sneaking away to swim in the local swimming hole. He could spend a lifetime swimming in that water, soaking away his cares and embracing the beauty of nature around him. The two talked for hours, laughing and telling stories like they were long-lost friends. It wasn't until the crickets and frogs were chirping around them that they realized how late it was. The moon hung overhead, casting a brilliant glow on the dewy grass and leaves around them. Josephine apologized for keeping him so late. Surely he had other places to be. But to her surprise, Wyatt just smiled at her, shaking his head. He took her hand in his and placed a gentle kiss on her skin. "I'm here to help any time," he said, waving goodbye with a smile. Josephine hovered in the doorway of her new home, watching him until he disappeared on the path back to town. The smile on her face showed no signs of fading. There was a buzzing inside her, a reminder that something special had just occurred. In all her life, she had never felt so connected to someone in such a short amount of time. Even with him gone, she was still picturing his bright eyes and his warm smile, content and surprised by the joy in her new life. Josephine curled up into her cozy bed in her night clothes. Her lantern flickered, softly illuminating her new home in a relaxing orange glow. She blew out the lantern and rolled on her back, pulling the soft covers up around her shoulders. From her bed, she could hear the rumble of the creek just beyond her head. The sound was like a lullaby, inviting her to close her eyes and fully relax. She pictured all the fish floating downstream, curling around corners and rocks, sailing gently and effortlessly across the landscape in a sea of transparent blue. As she continued on in her daydream, her eyes became even heavier. She relished in the comfort that the mattress brought to her tired bones and her achy muscles. Slowly, sleep began to overtake her, and she found herself drifting off into a night of sweet dreams. When she awakened in the morning, there was a chill in the air. Under her blankets, she was incredibly warm and comfortable. She knew she had to rise and greet the day before most of the town would even awaken. She got dressed, pulling her warm wool dress on. It was her first time wearing it, and it filled her with a sense of pride and joy. From this day forward, she would be making her own money, forging her own way in this beautiful world. She stepped out into the fresh morning air and was surprised to find a fog had descended over the valley. She could smell the earthy aroma of the wet soil and plants all around her, mixed with the tang of the fresh pine trees overhead. As she walked through the forest-lined path towards the town, she felt like she was in a magical land. The fog made for an ethereal atmosphere. She pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders and continued through the mist, taking the time to savor the environment. Deer hopped through the grass as she approached them, heading off to find their morning breakfast elsewhere. She admired their grace as they disappeared higher into the mountains, their white tails bouncing as they went. Even with the fog, the birds chirped as if it was a bright, sunny morning. Josephine watched them dip and dive through the white mist, their feathers glistening with condensation. By the time she reached the schoolhouse, she felt positively relaxed. The streets were empty, with everyone warmly tucked in their beds, and it brought her the sense of peace that only early mornings can bring. She wandered into the schoolhouse and began to light the fire. It would take a while to warm up the entire building, and she wanted her students to be comfortable. She poked the embers and watched them dance in the stone fireplace. It filled the room with a smoky, woody aroma that put her at ease. From her apron, she took out her cast iron pan and 2 fresh eggs she had brought on her journey. She cracked them over the fire, watching them sizzle with delight as their smell filled the room and enticed her stomach. She watched the eggs sizzle and the fire crackle for a long moment before she noticed Wyatt standing in the doorway. Behind him, the town streets were still empty and blanketed in that thick layer of fog. Josephine smiled and rose to greet him. Only then did she notice the bouquet of wildflowers spilling out of his arms. There was a nervous energy in him a tinge of pink on his cheeks that hadn't been there yesterday. He walked up to Josephine, handing her the flowers with a smile. "I thought you might like them for your first day." His words were hesitant, unsure. Josephine took the wildflowers with a smile. She had never been given flowers before. She buried her nose in them, delighting in their stunning smell. Wyatt watched her with admiration as she beamed at the bouquet. She invited Wyatt to sit with her for breakfast. He tried to say he wasn't hungry, but Josephine told him she wanted company, so he happily obliged. The two sat around her desk as Josephine dished out an egg to each of them. They both ate in each other's company as the sun began to cast its glow on the sleepy town. During lulls in conversation, they simply enjoyed the crackle of the fire. There was no awkwardness in their interactions, no silence they had a problem with. Josephine was surprised by how wonderful it felt to eat with him by her side. Once the eggs were gone, Josephine could hear the unmistakable pitter-patter of kids' feet making their way toward the schoolhouse. As Wyatt rose to leave, Josephine couldn't take her eyes off him. She longed to spend more time with him, to hear his voice, to see his smile. "Would you like to join me after work, Sheriff Wyatt?" she asked, just as he reached the door. He looked over his shoulder with a smile on his lips and a glint in his eye. "I'd love to," he replied. The children watched as he left the schoolhouse. Josephine felt almost as if she were floating. The morning had been one of the most magical she ever could have imagined, and as she looked down at the children's bright faces, she knew it would only get better. As she taught, the children took the time to tell her of the town. It was a fairly new settlement, but it had been spared the danger that the other settlements had been forced to face. "Why is that?" Josephine asked. The children told her that Sheriff Wyatt was well respected and well loved across this part of the territory. No one wanted to mess with them as long as he was around. Josephine felt a wave of emotion wash over her. She knew Wyatt was a good man, a kind man, but she didn't know just how much. Through the rest of her day teaching, she often found her mind wandering to Wyatt. When school ended for the day, she spent some time cleaning the classroom. As she dusted and cleaned, she couldn't help but feel this was the life she was always meant to have. She put the fire out and watched as the smoke rose and danced in the air with a satisfying sizzle. She stepped outside, and to her surprise, Wyatt was already sitting under a nearby tree, waiting patiently for her. She thanked him for waiting, and he thanked her for doing the work she did for the children. The two decided they would spend their afternoon exploring the countryside. Josephine had loved riding horses for as long as she remembered, and when she expressed her desire to explore all this landscape had to offer, Wyatt was more than happy to oblige. She returned home to get her horse. As she mounted it, she felt a sense of freedom. She ran her hand down the mare's soft mahogany fur. Her mare brushed its muzzle against her, relishing in her owner's kind touch. Wyatt led her out onto the prairie, into the foothills of the mountain. Overhead, the sky was dark, but the mountains and hills were even more beautiful because of it. They seemed to glow against the mosaic of fluffy gray the clouds created. As they rode, Wyatt talked to her about what drew him to this incredible place. He had always wanted to live in the West. He had wanted to explore the mountains and valleys and be one with the beautiful environment they were so fortunate to call home. In that same vein, he had wanted to make it safe for everyone. The West was a place of outlaws, of criminals, and he wanted to make a safe haven for families to call home. As he spoke with such passion, Josephine found herself gazing at him in wonder. She didn't know men as kind as him existed. When he looked into her eyes, they both felt as though there was an invisible spark, something drawing them together. They rode smoothly over the hills, feeling the fresh breeze wash over them as they experienced total and complete freedom. The repetitive clomp of the horses' hooves served as a soothing soundscape on their journey together. Every few feet, they found themselves gazing at one another, their smiles uncontained and pure. Far from the town, it felt as though the world was made for them. Then, the air around them seemed to shift. Josephine felt the cool, unmistakable raindrops on her face first. She called out to Wyatt to tell him it was starting to rain, and then it truly started to rain. Thick, cold raindrops cascaded from the sky in a whirlwind. The drizzle transformed into a rainstorm, which swept a magical chill across the land. Josephine's clothes became drenched. Her hair stuck against her face as they continued to ride. Wyatt glanced at her, ready to apologize, but she was laughing. Her laugh was almost louder than the rain, echoing across the mountains and reminding the flowers at her feet that it was time to bloom. The two managed to find the only tree for miles, a tall, sturdy oak tree that seemed as though it had been there for years. They dismounted their horses and sat at the base, under the comfort of the thick branches, soaking wet and still laughing. Josephine closed her eyes as she leaned against the trunk of the tree. The joy of the moment flooded her body, filling her with a kind of light she never imagined possible. All around her, the air was full of the lovely, earthy smell of the rain. Beside her, Wyatt began to laugh. The two giggled for what seemed like hours as they stared out at the rain that wanted them to stay exactly where they were. Josephine shuddered against the chill of her wet clothes. Wyatt wrapped his arm around her softly, rubbing her arms to keep her warm. In that instant, their eyes met. Josephine couldn't argue with the passion inside her, with the admiration she had for this man. Without thinking much more, She leaned forward, placing her lips on his. His hand found its way around the back of her neck, tangling in her wet hair and pulling her closer against him. As they kissed, a flood of love and passion passed through both of them. When their lips parted, Josephine couldn't help but gaze into Wyatt's amber eyes. The rain around them began to dwindle, but they both knew they had no plans of returning to town soon. In her new town, in her new life, Josephine was content. One chance move to the Wild West had given two people something they had wanted so desperately, something that would change their lives forever. I hope this story has helped you relax and slip into a night of peaceful, refreshing sleep. Please join me again tomorrow for another sleep story. Until then, sweet dreams.